Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about all the books that I have ever DNF'd. So let's just get right into the books. So I thought this would be kind of a fun video to do at the end of every year, talking about the books that I DNF'd that year, but because I've never done this video before, I decided this particular one I'm going to include all the books I've DNF'd in like the last 2 years since I started reading again, and just talk about why I DNF'd them, what I wasn't liking, what the books were about, different things like that. I just thought this would be interesting to sort of see, which books I tend to not finish, I guess. So the first book was The Matzah Ball by Meltzer. This was a book I picked up last year around Christmas time. I was very excited about this book because it is a Hanukkah romance, and I like trying sort of books with different holidays other than Christmas around the holidays. I really, at some point in time, would love to do a video of like just recommendations for other holiday type books, but I haven't really found any that I've really loved, and so because of that, I've just never done that video. But this one in particular, I don't know how far I got into this one. I want to say maybe 30%, and the characters were really getting on my nerves. The two characters in this, I believe, were in like their 30s or their late 20s. Like, they were older, and they were friends when they were kids. Like, we're talking like 12 years old, I think. And I was getting kind of annoyed because the girl, I think, in this book in particular, was constantly referencing their like relationship when they were younger, but they were literally like 12 years old, and she kept talking like they were in love with each other and like all this stuff, and like that they were so serious when they were together. And I was just like, you know what, like you weren't. You were a kid and your relationship was not that big of a deal. And she was constantly like, oh, but we dated back in the day. And I was like, no, you didn't. Like, you were friends at best. Like, you were like little children. And I was just getting really annoyed by that and how she kept referencing it like it was something that happened like a year or two ago, when it was like literally 10 years in the past, and she just kept bringing it up, and I was like, this is not relevant. And I ended up, when I was sort of getting those vibes from this book, I ended up looking up the reviews on Goodreads to just sort of be like, okay, does this get any better? Like, is it worth me pushing through to finish this? And a lot of the reviews were saying that this book, I don't really know enough about this, to be honest, to sort of be able to pick this up on my own, but this book makes a, I guess, political statement, you could say, about something that a lot of people have taken issue with. Like I said, it's not something that I know enough about that I can really even comment on that, but I think just the sheer amount of people that had an issue with it in the book, to me, means like it probably wasn't good. And so definitely, like, that was another reason that I was just like, okay, you know what, I don't want to continue with this, because obviously not only is the story not good, but it's obviously got some sort of, political undertone that I don't want to be a part of. And so I just decided to DNF this one, which, like I said, I was really sad about, because I would love to find some like good holiday romances that aren't Christmas based, but for now I haven't found any, and so this was definitely one that I DNF'd. Next was The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley. I picked this up, I think, last year, because I was hoping to do a video last year on reading all of Reese's book club picks, and this was one of the books, and I think this was one of the books that was actually like my final straw into like, okay, I'm not filming this video, because this was so boring and I just couldn't make myself care. This book follows a woman who is older. I think she's in her like 40s maybe, or 50s, I don't know, but she has gone back to this beach house that I guess she went to as a kid or a teenager, and she's with her husband, and I think she's got like kids and stuff. Like, she's built her whole life with this guy and lived most of it. Like I said, she's 40, 50, whatever, and she ends up running into this guy who she had a crush on as a teenager, and she's kind of like, oh my gosh, like, this is the boy of my dreams kind of thing, and she ends up kissing him one night. And this whole book, I believe, spans just like the 24 hours after she kisses him. And I thought this book was going to be, like, I knew that that happened, because I think it's on the back, like, it says that she, like, runs into this guy and everything. So I figured this book was going to be, like, her deciding, like, okay, do I stay with the guy that I've built this whole life with, or do I go for, like, my one true love kind of thing? And I just didn't really get those vibes from this. I just felt like it was kind of stupid. It was a lot of her just kind of being like, oh, I can't believe I did that, and, like, whatever. And it was so boring. It was so long, and I find in general I don't like Reese's book club picks, which is why I did not film that video. And this was, like I said, one of the reasons, because I just like could not even like power through this book. I was so bored. I didn't care. And I was like, I don't know. I just hate books like that where they're like, oh, I've been with this guy for 30 years, but like, oh, my one true love came back, so like I'm gonna make out with him. Like, I just hate books like that. It seems so stupid to me. And I don't know, because I'm like, if you were that easily swayed to like your first love, then why were you with this other guy to begin with? Like, I don't get that. And I don't know. I just really was bored with this one. Next was Court by Tracy Wolff, and I'm not going to say that this is a permanent DNF. This will probably at some point be a book that I read, but I tried reading this, I want to say early this year, and I read the three first books in this series back to back last year and really enjoyed them. But I found when I picked this one up, I just couldn't remember enough of it to really get into it. I wasn't in the headspace for sort of like the fantasy vibes that this book has at the time, and so I ended up just like putting it down because I realized I wasn't even paying attention anymore. I didn't really know what was happening. I wasn't understanding it, and so I just decided like, okay, I'm gonna put this down for now and revisit it at a time where I will probably have to reread the whole series, to be honest, before I read this book again, because I just didn't remember enough for it to make sense to me. And that was kind of sad because the books are so long. To have to like reread all three of them to read this next one is kind of annoying. So I may just wait, honestly, until this series is complete before I try to attempt it again, because then I can just read obviously all the books back to back and not forget anything in between. But I did really enjoy the first three, so like I do think I will revisit this one, and it has potential for me to love it. I just couldn't get into it at the time. Next was The Rebel by Kendall Ryan. I was so disappointed by this one because I waited months to get the first three books in the series from my library all at the same time. And when I finally got it and read it, I was like, really? This is what I was waiting for? This is a hockey romance series, and this is the first book in the series. I can't remember at what point I DNF'd in this. I want to say maybe 60% or something like that. I was just so bored. This was one of those books where I was reading it and I was like, I don't even care if the couple gets together because that's how uninvested I am in their story. And I don't know if it's Kendall Ryan as an author that maybe I've just like outgrown her stuff, because I know I really enjoyed her Hot Jocks series when I read that. That's another hockey series that she has. And I did really enjoy that at the time, but I kind of look back on it now and I'm like, would I enjoy it if I read it now that I've read, you know, as many books as I have to compare it to? And I'm not sure that I would. Like, I don't think it would hold up. But I tried this one and just like couldn't make myself care. I didn't care if they got together. I didn't care if they broke up. Like, I just really didn't care. And I think that was when I realized, like, okay, I need to put this book down because I'm not, like, I'm wasting my time. Like, I don't even care what happens. And so I did obviously put it down, didn't finish it. And to be honest, like right now, I can't even tell you what this book was about. That's how little of it I remember. And I don't feel like I'm really missing anything having DNF this one. I may revisit The Rookie, I think it is in this book. Sounded like it might be good. And I have played around with the idea of maybe just reading that one as a standalone because it does sound like it's more like tropes that I might like kind of thing. So I may pick that one up at some point, but I don't think I'd ever try and read the whole series. Next was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is another, you'll notice a recurring theme here of books I pick up to read for videos and end up hating. So this one I picked up last year in December, I want to say, because I was doing the video where I read Goodreads top 10 romances of the year, and this one was on the list, and frankly I should have seen it coming that this one was going to be on the list, but I just didn't for whatever reason. And I had been avoiding this book. I knew I wasn't going to like this book going into it. I read Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I did enjoy it, but I felt like I didn't love the political aspect of it. That's something I've learned since that book, is I don't like politics in my romances at all. Like, I want no mention of politics in my romance books. And on top of that, I'm not really super into like the royalty thing. So as much as that book was cute, it wasn't really full of things that I personally gravitate towards. And so like that's totally fine. Like obviously that book works for a lot of other people. It just wasn't really for me. And so I was kind of iffy on Casey McQuiston after that, but I was like, you know, I'm willing to try another book just to see. And this book, One Last Stop, is a sapphic romance that involves time travel. And this is super weird of me, but one thing that I absolutely hate in books in particular, and mostly in movies, is I hate time travel. I don't know why. I just think it's boring in books. I don't know. I've never read a book with time travel that I've been like, yes, this was amazing. And I find it's very confusing to read, and it's just not something I'm into. I'm also not one of those people that's like super into like the 70s or whatever. Like I know there are people that are really like, oh, the 70s are the best decade, or the 80s are the best, or whatever. I'm just like not one of those people, so I feel like the concept of time travel just is like very little interest to me. And so I knew going into this that I wasn't gonna like it because that's what like the predominant plot point of this book is. I think I got 20% into this one before I was just like, you know what, I can't do this. I already know I'm not gonna like it, and I was like, I know I'm gonna end up giving this book like a really awful review because I'm gonna be mad that I even read it because I already know I don't like it. And so like I said, I got like 17% in, 20% in, whatever it was, and decided, you know what, no, like I'll just film the video and say that I DNF'd the book because I just can't force myself to read it. I've since, you know, decided that Casey McQuiston is just not an author for me, which is fine. Obviously, a lot of people love Casey's books. That's great. I'm just not one of them, but like, I'm sure, like I said, there are tons of people that do like them, so just a me problem, I guess. Next is Some Kind of Perfect by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This one I feel like is so like controversial. Like people really hate me when I say this. I actually lost Goodreads followers when I posted that I was DNFing this book. I DNF'd this at 70%, so I really did give it like an honest go. And this is like a 650 page book, so 70% of that is like a lot of pages. I just found this book so boring. I don't know. I was over it by the end of Long Way Down. I already was uninterested. I shouldn't have even picked this book up, but I did because I kept thinking, oh, what if I want to read the Like Us series, which is like the spin-off series of their kids. And I was like, okay, maybe I should, you know, power through this one because I want to see the kids and I want to know, you know, how many kids they have and blah, blah, blah. But they ended up, like, addressing all of that in the epilogue of Long Way Down. They tell you how many kids everybody has and, like, sort of where they're at in their lives in the Long Way Down epilogue. And so I felt like reading Some Kind of Perfect was just pointless because I already knew how many kids everybody was going to have. I knew how they were going to have the kids. I knew the order, the age, the names. Like, I knew all the things, and I was just, like, not interested in reading about all of that happening because I feel like this book was an entire book of pregnancies. It jumps around timeline wise, but like literally 95% of the chapters I read were either someone deciding they were gonna have another baby, like talking about it, someone conceiving that baby and talking about it, someone giving birth, someone deciding a child's name, someone deciding how many kids they're gonna have or how they're gonna have kids or whatever. Every single chapter in this book was just about all of these kids being born. And if you've seen the Like Us series, you know how many books there are. There are a lot of kids. And that series I don't even think is done. So there are a ton of kids that are born in this book. And like I said, this book literally just jumped timeline-wise to all of these people having babies and naming babies and talking about babies. And I was just, 600 pages is too many for that. Like, it was so repetitive, so boring, and I was just like, why do we care? We already know how many kids they have. Like, why do we need to read all of this? And I just really wasn't interested. Like I said, I know, like, this is the one book in this video that everyone's probably going to be like, oh, but it's so good. I just didn't care. I really didn't. I was done. Like I said, by the time I was done Long Way Down, I was over it. And this book was really pushing it for me. And just, like, really wasn't a fan. The next couple books are books that I didn't, like, consciously DNF. Like, I didn't say, okay, I'm not going to finish this book. I just sort of put these books down one day and never picked them back up, which is super weird, but it happens. The first one is Walking Disaster by Jamie McGuire. I read Beautiful Disaster by this author before I knew that she was like a controversial, you know, person. And so I read that one. I did enjoy it, and this one is that book from the guy's perspective. And like I said, I was reading these before I knew about this author, but I found out about this author while I was like halfway through Walking Disaster. And I ended up, like, I got pretty close to the end. I would say probably like 70% into this book when I just like never picked it up again. And I think the reason for it is the last scene in both of these books is like a big like boxing underground fight club whatever type scene. And I just really hate that in books. If you followed me for a while, you know I mention this all the time. I have no issues with like an actual fight in a book. Like if two guys are like going at it outside of a bar or whatever, then like that's fine, I don't care. But I hate reading about like sport fighting, like boxing or like in a ring, like underground fighting. Like I just find that so boring. And there's just, like, I don't care, like, who's punching who and what's happening when it's, like, in, like, a ring in a competition. Like, that's just, I don't know. I've never been interested in that. I find those chapters incredibly long and tedious to get through, and I just don't like books with those in it. And the last scene, like I said, in this book does include that, and so I already knew what was going to happen because I've read it from the girl's perspective, so I sort of fizzled out with this book because I was like, I don't really want to reread another fight scene again when I've already read the same fight scene before. So I just, like, kind of stopped reading and never picked it back up. Plus, like I said, I heard about the author, so then I was like, yeah, you know, I'm not really in any kind of rush to get through this. So I did end up finally, like, officially DNFing it. I took it off my Goodreads and just haven't picked it up or even had, like, a remote desire to pick it up since then. The other one is Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. This is a YA book about a girl who has really bad social anxiety and this boy that she meets that she starts sort of hanging out with and has, like, a crush on and whatever. And this, like I said, was a book, I was maybe halfway through it and I just put it down one day and never picked it back up. I do think maybe someday I'll finish it, but I don't know, I lost interest, never picked it back up. It was okay. It was probably one of those books that you'd have to read, like, in one sitting to really feel like you got enough content out of it. It is kind of slow moving, but also, like, a very quick book to read. So I think if you read it all in one sitting, it probably would have been interesting, but I was just reading it very slowly, and I think that was making it not as interesting. And so I never picked that book back up. And lastly was Now Entering Adamsville by Francesca Zappia. This is another one, like I said, just put it down one day, never picked it back up. I picked this up, I think 2 years ago now, actually, during October, like, spooky season, and I think what happened was actually that was the year that I got super busy with my business around Christmas time, and so I would have picked this book up in October to read it for, like, spooky season, and I think I just got slammed work-wise and just never picked it back up. And by the time I was, you know, done with all of, like, the Christmas stuff, it was January, and, like, I didn't want to read a Halloween book, or, like, what I consider a Halloween book in January, so I just never picked it back up, and I still, to this day, have never picked it back up. It's still got the bookmark in it on my shelf over there, and maybe someday I'll get around to it, but it hasn't been particularly speaking to me. It's a book about a girl who lives in this town, I'm pretty sure, that had all of these, like, monsters in it. That's really all I remember. Like I said, it was very, like, Halloween vibes, but I just never got around to finishing it, but maybe someday I will do that. And so those are all of the books that I have DNF'd so far. I may be missing a couple because, to be honest, some of them I don't even, like, write down anywhere or put on my Goodreads or whatever because they're just, like, so bad. I mean, now that I think about it, there's actually one other that I can think of, which was Last Chance Summer by Shannon Clare. I picked this one up. It's a YA summer camp counselor romance, which I love, like, romances set at summer camps. Very hard to find good ones, though. And this one I picked up because I read another book by this author called Surviving Adam Mead back when I first started reading, and I did like it. Couldn't tell you what it was even about now, other than that it's a high school football romance. But I picked this book up because summer camp, like I said, it's hard to find. I think I DNF'd this at, like, 7 pages. Like, I didn't even get in because the first, like, 7 pages were all this girl talking about, like, going to this party and how she had to keep her social status and, like, maintain her popularity. And that is my biggest pet peeve with YA, is I hate any references to social standing within the school or, like, being friends with the popular kids or even the popular kids existing. I hate when that is written because I think it's just so, like, almost cliche. Like, my high school experience was not like that. Like, I couldn't have cared less what the popular kids were doing, and so I think, like, I just get really annoyed by these books about these characters that are obsessed with that because I'm like, is anyone actually like that? Like, I never knew anyone that was like that, and I don't know. It really bothers me, and I couldn't even get past, like I said, the first 7 pages. I still have that book because I'm, like, sad that I couldn't read it, but I don't know what to do with it either. Like, I should probably just unhaul it, to be honest, but didn't love that one. Definitely DNF'd that one really early. Like I said, there may be a couple other books I'm not thinking of that I did that to as well, but that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. So anyway, that is everything for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. I do new book videos every single week, and I will see you next time.